Hi there, my name is Jeff, and I purchased a new daily driver, and I'm gonna modify it. I'm kind of thinking Italian job inspired, and I may or may not have already ordered some parts that are on the way for this car. Now here's the thing, I travel a lot for my line of work, and I wanted something that was going to be comfortable and reliable. I've had a lot of older stuff, a lot of higher mileage stuff, and I just want to get in and go. And sure, I could have purchased an SUV or something, but I still wanted it to be fun, and so I picked the ultimate compromise and the best enthusiast car for that type of purpose, a hot hatch. This is my new to me 2015 Mini Cooper S, which I picked up with just 35,000 original miles. You can find these third gen minis just about everywhere at all sorts of price points, and they are incredibly slept on. Not only are they the most reliable minis ever produced, not just by mini standards, but reliable period, but they have a gem of an engine under the hood that makes them incredible for creating the ultimate pocket rocket hatch. But let me show you what I bought. The real gem and what drew me to these cars is the engine. Now, of course, BMW owns Mini, if you didn't know that, and it's got a BMW engine, but this motor is special. It's essentially a baby version of the legendary BMW B58, which is a 6-cylinder, and instead they've created a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder called the B46/B48, depending on what you have. The only difference between those names is actually the emissions tied to that particular motor, and they're the exact same motor otherwise, and they make the same power, etc. So these motors in the Mini Cooper S were rated for about 189 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque, which is fantastic for an entry-level sports car, especially when you consider these minis, which were available with a 6-speed manual or an automatic transmission. With the manual transmission, these cars only weigh 2,700 pounds, which is very, very impressive. And then given that power-to-weight ratio, these things move really well. We're talking 0 to 60 in the low 6-second range with a top speed of 146 miles per hour. So that is all great on paper. But here's the crazy part. This is a BMW motor. It was also used in a variety of other BMWs. It's the same motor also used in the higher Mini JCW, where it's rated for about 215 horsepower. And the highest tune that I saw in a BMW version with a factory tune was around 250 horsepower. So then this engine appears to be very undertuned as it sits here in the Mini Cooper S. So you see all sorts of crazy factory tune options that I've looked at thus far, including one that made 288 horsepower on this engine without any modification, simply just flashing the ECU, which is a huge jump. That's literally a 100 horsepower jump from stock to 288 horsepower. And again, in such a lightweight car, that means this thing would be an absolute rocket ship of an automobile. Now, I do want to say within reason, I'm not sure that's the tune that I'll jump to. Of course, supporting mods, things like intercoolers and other components just to help keep the car cool, make sure you have all the correct airflow, etc., is all very much important as well. And being that this is my daily, I'm not sure we'll go that crazy, but there's a lot of options on the table, and I think these can be real rocket ships. Let's move on to the exterior, in which case my particular third-gen Mini is an F56 finished in blazing red metallic. This is one of the 2 reds that were offered on these third-gen Minis. I would have preferred the chili red personally, but of course when you're looking for a used car, beggars can't be choosers. But of course, as long as it was red, white, blue, or even British Racing green, I think there's lots of fantastic color options for these third-gen Minis. There's also lots of different body styles, and that was another decision I had to make, but of course I wanted to go with the classic, which is the 3-door hardtop, and that's what you see here, of course, being the 2 doors on the side, and then the hatch on the rear being the lightest, most performance-oriented body style. But they were also offered in convertibles. There was also a 4-door, and then they even had the more rugged off-road versions classified as the Countryman and such. But this is what I went with, classified as an F56 third-gen Mini Cooper, and this to me is peak Mini Cooper. They have the iconic styling, they still look quirky, instantly recognizable as a Mini, but they're about as reliable as it gets. And here in the front, as far as the overall styling looks, they have a lot of classic traits. So for example, this being an S, the Mini Coopers, the third gens as a whole, started around $20K back in 2015, and this one as equipped is around $30,000 thanks to some extra options. The S, of course, being a slightly higher performance trim, also got the hood scoop, which was a notable S feature, but is not functional on these cars. says it was not required. In this case, our front badge has actually been blacked out by the previous owner. You can also see that my car also has the RV tow hitch package, which I do not like at all and will absolutely be removing. We'll call that weight reduction. You also got fog lights and then LED lights that also came with LED DRLs around the outside that are all, of course, very, very cool as well. You had your choice for various roof options, white or black traditionally. This car is finished in black, but I may be wrapping that in white. I also have, as you see here, the sunroof, which was optional as part of things like the premium package, which this car is equipped with. That also came with things like these rails here on the side of the roof, and then also the keyless entry package, which I love that this car is equipped with. That makes my life so much easier for just using this car. Additionally, here on the side, you can see it's currently sitting on a set of aftermarket Aodan wheels. I will be changing these out. As much as bronze and red are a great color combo, it's not what I'm going for in this particular build. You can see the brakes behind it though, which aren't the best thing to look at. The JCW has a much more impressive looking brake kit and overall brake performance package, but I'm not sure if we'll be upgrading that or not. There are actually plenty of brakes for what is a very, very lightweight car. As we come around to the rear here, more of that classic Mini styling. There were a variety of different rear roof options. In this case, we have the most simple one. And of course, we have the hatch in the back, which is iconic. We can go ahead and open up here, and you can see you get additional storage in addition to having all of these cool seats in the back of your Mini Cooper, which makes it extra practical for me in particular. My car, as you can see, also has the Borla exhaust, which I think actually sounds pretty good, all things considered. Lastly, there's some other cool luxuries over here on the side. You have the cool chrome badge, and usually this beltline here is also chrome, but it's currently been taped up to actually hide this chrome beltline, which is a very popular mod in the Mini community. The cool thing I wanted to note is that these are actually locking gas caps. So there's a little rod in here that actually pokes down when the car is locked so that people can't tamper with your gas cap, which for a car at this price point is kind of unusual, but I love that it's there. So next I want to go ahead and show you the interior, which on this particular car is finished in black. And the first thing you might notice is just how quirky this is. What I love with these third gen Minis is as they kept modifying these cars and improving them and changing them, this in this generation still feels just as authentic even as the R series. I know some people will still prefer the R series, and that's okay, but I personally believe that all around these third gens are the best because they have all the character and soul that you could possibly ask for. In this case, we have a cool Mini Cooper S door sill plate here. Those were added afterwards. You also have rear seats that you can easily access here through the back seats that are currently covered by our dog blanket here in the back. But the seats themselves are also excellent. In true BMW fashion, they actually have these extending pieces, which is kind of fun. But most importantly to me is actually the seats themselves. Note this section here. You have this large chunk of side bolstering, and you would be surprised just how well that works in these cars. To me, this is honestly all I need to enjoy these cars and be just totally comfortable as I'm driving it, even in high G corners. And it's just been a blast so far with all the driving I've done thus far. With that though, let's go ahead and climb in and I can show you everything else that we've got going on in this car. Now there are some options inside here. I believe things like this armrest might have actually been optional, which also has a little bit of a storage cubby in it, which is kind of fun. And then you can also see in the general styling of the car that there's just circles everywhere. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, Mini felt that that was pretty important. Now here's the cool part. To start these cars, it's right here. You use this cool ignition switch. So in this case, with our manual transmission, we're going to go ahead and clutch brake and start it up. Starts up, and then the thing I didn't show you, of course, is also some of the fun quirky animations. Like when you first get into the car actually winks at you on the screen for the little digital gauge cluster here right in front of me, which is kind of, again, another fun quirk. This particular car, as part of the premium package and other add-ons, I also have the Harman Kardon sound system, which you can tell if it's on a Mini from these generations, going off these little pills here in the A-pillars. And honestly, I think it's an excellent option. When it comes to some of these cars, especially on the cheaper side, getting the upgraded sound system really goes a long ways, and I would say pays yourself back in dividends, even if it takes you extra money to pick one up. Now let's talk about the details. Here in the front, this steering wheel instantly feels BMW to me, but it's a fantastic steering wheel. I think it's the perfect size. It has the right cutouts. It feels very comfortable and durable. You have lots of luxury options here, including adjusting your infotainment controls and even cruise control, which we definitely want because we're going to be taking this thing on road trips. The digital display itself, very, very quirky here in the middle. You can see there's not a whole lot going on in terms of what it's telling you. You basically have your speedo and your tach here, but you can actually scroll through the digital display and change what it's displaying, which is kind of fun to see how exactly that works, and still having options for temperature, range, and all that types of figures. As you take a look here in the middle, this is of course the really fun, quirky part, and this is the fact that this car has this sort of illuminated display around it and was also available with a variety of different center displays. Now, unfortunately, I have the basic display. You could get an optional, slightly larger display that was also touchscreen that came with some better options as far as like how you play your music and such, but unfortunately I don't have them, and that may be an upgrade that we have to do in the future. But it's pretty quirky, it's pretty straightforward, and it has all sorts of options, including this little mini over here on the side for the actual vehicle info tab that I think is kind of fun, and it can tell you all sorts of stuff, including your range and consumption in addition to what you have on your main screens, while also being how you actually go through your multimedia settings and all that stuff. Now, even though this is the basic one, you still get Bluetooth connectivity that you can actually use for calls. Unfortunately, not for playing music. Your only options are going to be through the USB or aux in for this particular system, but I can live with that. There are, however, some other cool options on this car in terms of what you can actually do with this ring. There's ways to actually change this ring so that it replicates your speedo, and you'll see it climb here into the red while you shift, almost like a shift light, which is kind of a cool thing. And it also has just, of course, ambient lighting that matches the rest of the car. So when you have the headlights on, you can see some of the various ambient lighting, let's say, that's in various spots throughout the car that you can easily change via this button here. And if you actually hold the button, it'll also start cycling through the colors in essentially a rainbow fashion. That's a pretty cool, let's say, party mode for this car. So it'll just continue changing now that that's been set, which is kind of a cool random ambient lighting quirk of the Mini Cooper, and still has, again, all of the sunshade options and of course your lighting functions up top. And then some things like this little security light here are classic BMW functions. For your air conditioning here, it's all right here. You can see you actually have the dual zone climate control settings with one fan speed controller there in the middle, and you have some more toggles down here. With the manual, the auto start stop button doesn't really do anything. I guess it's just redundant or cheaper to leave it in this case. And then your traction control is a two-stage setting here that you can actually adjust through your main setting, and then you can of course hold it and you can turn it off completely as well. So there you go, the full delete, if you will, for turning everything off. And you could also option heated seats, which I don't have on my particular car. It does come with two cup holders up front here, which actually surprisingly most of the time, even with large containers, don't get in the way of the shifter, which is a nice thing to see. That's usually the bane of most manual transmission cars, is that the cup holders almost always get in the way of the manual. You also get another little storage cubby, and of course a physical parking brake right here. So that's a quick look at the Mini. There is one thing actually I just wanted to point out. Of course, have your sun visors, which are adjustable and of course are backlit with mirrors, but then the driver's side gets this extra sun visor so you can completely cover your side if you need to whenever you're being blinded. So that's kind of a fun quirk of the Mini. Well, one of the many fun quirks of the Mini, I should say. But there you have it. That's a look at the interior. All right, let's go ahead and take the Mini for a drive. We'll go ahead and put it in Sport, of which, of course, I don't think I mentioned earlier, but it has 3 different driving modes: Sport, Mid, and Green, which is all kind of self-explanatory. And what's funny is it'll also give you little messages telling you, let's motor hard, when you put it into the Sport mode, which I think is kind of funny. All right, we'll go ahead and put the window up. All right, so driving this thing. So immediately, the first things you notice are the transmission and the steering. The steering is fantastic, and that is a just lovely Mini trait. It feels so quick, but also it gives you good feedback. Like, it doesn't feel totally numb, which I love. That was the first thing I noticed when I took this car for a test drive. The other thing, the shifter, as I mentioned earlier, what you notice about that is that you can tell immediately it is a BMW manual transmission. Now, personally, I'm not usually the biggest fan of the way that BMW does their manuals, but to be honest, it's something that I will get used to. I've gotten used to every manual transmission ever, and you know what? The shifter itself is quite nice. It's really notchy, and it just feels really, I guess, pleasant to use, not to mention the fact that this car also actually has rev match. So as you can actually go through some of this stuff, it's particularly in the sport modes, it's not active in all modes. It'll actually automatically rev match the car for you, which again, I get that not everybody likes, but I think it's actually pretty good in this car. And if you want to turn it off, all you have to do is simply turn your traction control off, and that disables rev match. So those are kind of your easy basic options. Now currently, there's quite a bit of noise on the inside of this car, and there's probably a couple reasons for that. To some extent, the wheels and tires, I assume, on this car, the way they're set up, are probably not helping. If anything, maybe they're adding some extra noise, particularly on the freeway, and I think they might be ruining my fuel economy ever so slightly. A buddy of mine with an F56 was getting better fuel economy with his stock wheels and tires set up than I was on my modified, slightly modified, but mostly stock Mini. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And that may be affecting it. Additionally, in order to maintain lightweight, you do usually sacrifice things like sound deadening. However, this still being a 3-door hardtop means on the freeway, where I've usually taken other convertibles and such, where you can have a lot of wind noise in those cars, I won't have that in this car. And I've already done multiple road trips, driven it both north and south of Arizona. I've put almost, I think, 1,000 miles on this car since I've had it. And it's been an absolute blast. So far, I love everything about the car. The fact that it's so fuel efficient, which again, I don't think I mentioned that earlier, so I can give you the quick facts and figures. The EPA for this particular car, I believe, rates it at something like 27 miles per gallon city and 35 miles per gallon highway. So in terms of a road trip car and being fuel efficient and enjoyable, you don't have any problems in this Mini. It's quite nice in that regard. So I love to see that type of items just for the general practicality of the car. There are some things I'm not a fan of. That would be the fuel gauge, for example. It's these ticks on the side of the gauges. I don't like that. It makes zero sense to me. It most of the time has me wondering what my actual range is. Fortunately, the digital stuff kind of steps in for that. Man, you know, in these turns, the lateral grip of this car is just so immense. And I hope I don't lose that when I change the wheel and tire setup on this car. The lateral grip is incredible, and I can feel myself using the side bolsters in this seat, and I'm really, really glad they're there. The other cool part, and this is going to be hard to hear inside without the windows down and stuff, I'll see if I can't mic it up later, but when you drive this car, in sport in particular, as you sort of rev it out, you actually start to get the occasional pops and stuff on the D-cell. You can also get yourself a bit of turbo spool, and you can definitely get some blow-off noise from time to time as well. So in that sense, all of that is just a ton of fun in these cars. Blind spot wise, in general practicality, would have loved a backup camera just for general new car use case. Don't have that in this car, but there's really no blind spots. The mirrors themselves, I think, are the perfect size without being too big like they are on the brand new 4th generation Minis. But then whenever I check my blind spot, you do have that A-pillar in the side, but honestly, I can see straight back. It almost feels like there's wraparound glass essentially all around the cars with no pillars that are obstructing your view. That was a green Mark III Supra. That was cool. But anyways, yeah, honestly, there's a lot to love about this car. The driving perspective is just fantastic, and I think this is what really sold me on the car. I can understand that there should be like a ton of these out there on track days and all sorts of stuff, and in fact, if anything, what I take away from this is I don't understand how there aren't more of these in the car community showing up in more places. Like, yeah, they exist, I'm sure, but I just don't understand how they're not everywhere. Given the price point for what all you can get with these cars, plus the fact that they're just fun, they're great. The steering is fantastic. Manual transmissions, which who knows how rare that is. The biggest downside, and I would really love to do this if I figure out how the best way of going about it, but a limited slip differential. That was optional for these cars, and I think it was a very, very rare option. So it had, in other words, it had a very low take rate, and so I don't think there's many out there, let alone what are the odds of finding a manual transmission. Also very rare for these cars. I think a lot of them were automatics, so much so that the new 4th gen Minis are all automatic only. However, that's now a dual clutch, and these cars later in their life also got a dual clutch throughout their many various updates during the production run. The stiffness of the suspension is fantastic for a street car. It's not so stiff that it's going to just rattle your bones out of your body, but it's also not so soft that the minute you start driving it on a twisty road like this, you start to go, you know what, it doesn't feel that sporty, there's too much body roll. It's honestly really, really good from the factory. I find myself quite impressed here. This is one of those things where I almost feel skeptical on modifying certain aspects of the car because I don't want to ruin it. There's a lot of really good engineering here, and I definitely think we can improve some stuff if we just gave this car a slightly more powerful tune, at least a JCW tune. I imagine this thing really starts to wake up even more. We'll do some slight mods to, of course, try to wake it up down lower before the turbo really starts spooling. You can feel the turbo start to come on more powerfully around $2,000. But boy, sometimes it can feel a little bit sluggish. But at the same time, the way the gearing works, first gear is super short, but at the same time on the freeway, I still feel plenty of power in sixth. So I'm still trying to work out the characteristics and the best ways of using this car. That being said, I'm new to the Mini universe. I've always wanted an R53, the early first gen of the new Minis, but just never got about it. Now I finally own one, and I'm going to modify it. It's going to be my daily driver, obviously. That's why I needed to find a low mileage one. I'm looking forward to the experience with this car. I'm going to use it everywhere. I'm going to take it everywhere all the time, and so this is just going to be a lot of fun, not to mention the ownership experience. So that being said, I would love to hear what you guys think I should do in terms of modifications. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm thinking stuff along the Italian job line, and I've already ordered some parts in that inspirational element, but I'm open. I want to see what you guys think. If you guys know stuff better than I do, if you have some advice for just general third gen Mini ownership, please let me know down below using the comment section. That being said, that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.